Thank you for joining me today for this discussion around the Webex Trials Toolkit, and specifically the Webex Trial Creation and Setup Essentials. My name is David Jennings and I'm a Technical Solutions Architect within the Cisco Collaboration Experience Programme. This discussion is a follow-up to the Webex Trial Planning Essentials, and we strongly recommend that you familiarise yourself and make sure you're confident with all the subjects discussed in that section. So what are we going to learn today? When we conclude this session, you should be able to create a Webex trial from the Webex Control Hub and understand how you can troubleshoot the potential errors when you're creating the trial. We're going to show you after you've created the trial how to do the setup and initial provisioning, and then finally we're going to explain some of the key resources and training materials available to you. The agenda is that we're going to show starting a Webex trial, and I'm going to do an actual live demonstration of that. Then I'm going to take you through some of the resources, how you can get help and assistance, and how you can log issues or faults. And then I'm going to leave you with details on how you can contact us if you have any problems in the creation of the trial. So without any delay, we're going to do a live demonstration now of how to start a Webex trial in the Control Hub. So here we are logged into the Control Hub, and I'm actually logged in with my Webex Trials account here, but this would be exactly the same when anybody's logged in at the partner level as well. And what we want to do is we want to create a new trial for our new customer. So let's hit the Create Trial button on the top right here. Now when we do that, that's going to enter a step-by-step guide or walkthrough of setting up your new customer trial. So I'm going to go through some of the fields that we find and some of the issues that we find along the way and questions that we typically receive. So the first one is quite simple. This will be the legal company name. So I'm just going to put something in here that I know is free. And the second field here is the administrator email, and we do get a lot of questions and confusions around this. So for example, let's say that we have a user that exists in the public organization. So if I add this user into here, okay. So we receive an alert here, and this alert says that the user already exists, and that by proceeding, this account will be moved to the new organization we create. So this is a user that exists in the public org, or what we call the consumer org. And this is not a killer. You can continue with this trial with this user, and as the alert states, that user will be moved into the new organization that you create here. The other issue that people see is when they add an email such as this one. And in this case, this is actually a user that already exists in Webex, but already exists in an org. And in this case, you get the entered values already in use, try a different value. So in this case, the user exists. This is my user. I already exist in the Cisco org. And we can't proceed on the trial with this user. If the user has signed up for a free online trial that comes with Control Hub Online, they will need to delete that trial before you proceed. If the user is an existing customer org already, then again, they'll need to either delete the user from that organization or provide an alternative email. Now, if I put in a user here that will work, so I'm just going to put something else in here, you can see that we don't get any alerts with that user and we're good to proceed. Now, what we sometimes recommend within CCP, and this isn't a requirement, you can continue with an individual's mailbox, but sometimes we recommend using an alias mailbox. So that would be a group mailbox or an alias for an individual. We've just found that we have good success with ensuring there are no conflicts with emails of that type. So not a requirement, but just a recommendation that we have. The next is the business vertical, so make sure that you select the correct business vertical for the customer type that you have. And then this fourth field here is very important. This is the country for determining the data residency region. Now this will determine where the identity service is located, so where authentication happens. And in certain regions as well, it will also define things such as where data is stored, so messages and content. Now it's really important that you select the correct country here for the bulk of the customer's users, because this cannot be changed at a later date. So I'm just going to pick Australia, which is my local country. And then finally, we have to tick this box to certify the customer is in a supported location. If you're not sure, you can click the link there and it will provide you with a list of the supported locations so you can verify that. So I'm just going to select yes, because Australia is a supported location. On the next page here, this is where we're going to select the trial services or the licenses that will be associated to this trial. Now, we typically recommend that you select Teams, team meetings, and Webex Enterprise Edition meetings as well, so that the customer can get the full experience of all the services. The next field is the calling section. Now it's quite important that you do not select this box unless you are certain that you are doing a Webex calling trial. You must have PSTN numbers and some method of getting PSTN into the Webex calling cloud before proceeding. So please do not select this unless you are certain that you are going to be performing a calling trial. If you do select it, then you're going to get into a loop in provisioning where you have to provide numbers before you can proceed. So only select this if you're certain that you need it. We can select the devices here, and you can have up to 20 licenses within your trial of both room systems and also Webex boards. And then we come down here to the license quantity. Now within a trial you can actually provide up to 1,000 user licenses. Now we typically suggest that this is very high. We normally recommend keeping that below 100. With the smaller trials, it's much more easy for you to support the customer, to make sure that all the users are properly educated in the use of the application. So we typically find that the most successful trials, again, are lower than 100 users. There is a 1,000 maximum, however, so you could go up to that level if you needed to. And then finally, the trial duration. So you can select from the 90 to 30-day trial duration through that drop box. Now if we hit next here, this is where we're going to select the Webex URL. So there is some validation in here. So if we enter Cisco, for example, obviously that's an existing site. You'll see that we get here the error site URL is already in use. Enter a different site URL. So I'm just going to put in here something that I know is unused and validate. And you can see that there we get the tick to say that this is a valid site. And next we select the Webex meetings time zone. And again, this is very important. This is used for the default scheduling. So when people are scheduling meetings, this is the schedule that they will be presented with by default. But it's also used to select the correct cluster for the Webex site to be deployed upon. So again, it's quite important that you select the correct time zone for the bulk of the customer users. So in my case here, I'm going to scroll down to Brisbane, which is my local time zone. There we go. And then I will hit next. This next page here, this is going to present options for the Webex call service. This is a legacy service, and it's not likely that you will want to provide this as part of a trial. So you just need to hit skip on this section. And here we get the option to ship devices. So in certain countries and locations, you can request the shipping of devices from a trial device pool to the customer. Once those trial devices have been finished with as part of the trial, they do need to be replaced. But if you returned. But if you do want to order equipment as part of a trial, you can do so on this page. In my case, I'm not going to do that, so I'm just going to hit skip. So at this point the trial is being provisioned, so it will take a few minutes for this to complete. Once it's complete, we'll receive a message back to say that the trial has been completely set up. Okay, so as you can see here, the trial has been added and we're ready to go. One thing I'd just like to call out here is that some services are still being set up even once you receive this message. So sometimes it's a good idea to leave the trial for half an hour or so to complete its provisioning, or an hour as it suggests here. Things such as the Webex meeting site can take a little longer to deploy, so it's usually a good idea just to leave things for a short while after completing this. I'm just going to hit done on here. And if I look at my current customers, I can see that I have my customer here, or I can go to customers and I can see that the customer is listed here. So if I click on the customer, we're now going to complete the provisioning. You'll see that the first time you click on the customer, we have the button here that says set up customer, and that's because there are still some provisioning tasks to undertake. If we look at a trial, for example, this one that has been set up, you'll see it says view customer. So whenever you see it say set up customer, that means there are still some provisioning tasks to complete. So let's do those now. So if I hit the set up customer button, this will cross launch to the customer's direct control hub. Now, the very first time that you log in, as I mentioned, there are a few provisioning steps that you need to undertake before you can proceed. So here we go, and we can see the first page that we're presented with is just a review of the licensing that we provided as part of this trial. So in my case, we provided 100 licenses and 20 of each device type. Let's click the Get Started button here. Now, this is where we can set calling settings, so things such as extension length and so on. Now, if you are not doing calling, or if you don't plan on doing calling as part of your trial, then you can skip this section just by hitting the next. If you are doing calling, then again, you can hit next and you can come back and change these values later. So I'm just going to press next at this point. Then we get through to the enterprise settings section. And the first thing we're going to set in here is the Webex SIP address. So every user, every device that's registered to the Webex Cloud is given a full SIP URI. And this is where we're going to define what that URI will be set up as. So I'm just going to put in here. Again, there's a validation test. So if we hit the check availability, we just want to make sure that that comes back green to say that that SIP URI is available. If it isn't, as it is in my case, it is, but if it isn't, in that case, you would need to select a different SIP subdomain. And we can choose at this point to enable Webex Assistant for devices if we like, but I don't need to do that here, so I'm just going to click Next. And at that point, we're ready to go. Provisioning complete. Okay, so we saw a live demonstration of the creation of a trial org. But these slides will be made available to you. These slides also have the same steps that I just demonstrated and the same points that I clarified as we were going. So you can review these at a later date if you want to, and you can follow the presentation and step through while you're creating your own trials. But once we've created our trial, what's next? Where can we go for additional resources and support? So here we've given you a whole bunch of links that provide really useful pointers as to where to go next. So for example, on the top left here, you can see that we have the live Control Hub training. So we offer training both live and recorded for using Control Hub and performing administrative tasks. We have some the CCP toolbox down here, and this is where you can sign up for your own trial org. So you can set up your own org, you can go in there, you can do testing, you can do training and so on. This isn't for customer trials, this is just for your own personal use, training and demonstration purposes. And then on the right hand side here, we can see that we have a whole bunch of resources where you can go to find details on more specific functions. And the real key area is help.webex.com as well. Use that as a resource. On there are all kinds of videos and useful documents that you can follow in order to set up most of the features on Control Hub, if not all. So where do we go for tech support for trials? We are asked this question often. Trials come with technical support. So we have our self-service options where as we mentioned, we've got help.webex.com and calling.help.cisco.com. These are available for self-help. So there are lots of articles and walkthroughs on those pages. You can raise a support ticket as well for any issues that you have. So you can raise issues with TAC. We have the TAC numbers here for you, the US numbers, but you can also submit cases online through help.webex.com or through Control Hub itself. And you'll be assisted by a TAC engineer in resolving any problems. And then finally, you can contact us directly in Teams as well. So for partners, when you apply for a toolbox, as mentioned on the previous slide, you'll be added into a space called Partner Ask CCP Toolbox, and you can ask any questions related to the provisioning of a trial in there. If you're internal to Cisco, we have a similar space called the Ask CCP space. So you can ask your questions in that space regarding the provisioning of trials. Okay, so what did we see? So we showed how we could create a trial from the Control Hub, and I took you step by step through each field that you need to complete, and I pointed out some of the common issues that we experience and some of the questions that were typically asked. So we talked about how to troubleshoot those, things such as clashing emails and so on. And then finally, I showed you where you could go to find key resources as to the next steps in configuration. And this is a prerequisite to the CCP Webex Trial Deployment Essentials. So we talked about Planning Essentials as being a prerequisite for this discussion. Following this, you can review the Deployment Essentials, and that's going to take you through the next steps. Things such as domain verification and claiming, converting users into this org, and setting up some of the various connector services. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and good luck with your trials.